We continue now at the top of Daf Yomi Gemara, Mesechet Sanhedrin. This is Sanhedrin Daf 10b. On the previous Amud, Rava said that the reason why by lashes we need a court of 23 judges is because lashes, malchus, is really just a form, a lighter form, so to speak, of the death penalty. Just like by a death penalty case, you need to have 23 judges, so too by malchus, you need to have 23 judges. And the Gemara asked on the previous Amud, if that is the case, why are we so careful when it comes to situations of malchus to make sure to only give the amount of malchus that the person can survive? Let it be that the person dies if it really just is a form, a lighter form, so to speak, of the death penalty. And the Gemara answered that there's a halacha that you have to give the lashes on the back of a living person, and that's why we say that you have to, again, evaluate how many lashes can this person take. But the Gemara then asks if there's a brisa which says, let's say they evaluated that the person can take 20 lashes, the halacha happens to be that the amount of lashes has to be divisible by 3, and so the brisa says that you give 18 lashes in that case. But the Gemara says if it's true that the only reason that the person has to survive is because you have to give lashes on the back of a living person, in this case where he can take 20 and he's going to die on 21, so limchia esrim v'chadel, let's strike him 21 times, v'chimayis b'hachadel and let him die on that last one, because when you're striking him, it's still striking the back of a living person. At that moment he's still alive, and then you'll strike him and he will die on that last one. What's the problem? And the Gemara says to that, Amar Lei said to him, Amar Kratz, because the pasuk says, V'nikla achicha leinecha, again it says that your brother is the one, he's the one that you're giving these malchus to. The literal translation of the pasuk being that your brother is dishonored before your eyes, and we learn from that pasuk achar shalaki, even after the malchus achicha, but he still needs to be your brother, he still needs to be alive. Veleka, and that would not be true if you would give him 21 malchus in this case, and that's why you give him 18 malchus. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Ibor hachodesh b'shlosha. If they add a day to the month, that is done with 3 judges. And the Gemara says, Chishav lo katani. It doesn't say in the Mishnah that the calculation of whether or not they should add a day, that requires 3 judges. That's not the way it's phrased in the Mishnah. And Kiddush lo katani. It also doesn't say in the Mishnah that the sanctification of the new month, that is done with 3 judges. Ela Ibor, rather what it says is that if they add a day to the month, that is done with 3 judges. But the Gemara says, lo likdusha, simply don't sanctify it, and then memela, obviously, you're adding a day to the month. And Rashi explains, Kiddush lo katani, it doesn't say the sanctification of the new month is with 3 judges. The name of the tzarech gimel lekabel edus hachodesh mipio edem, that would mean that you need 3 judges to accept the testimony about the new month from witnesses who saw the new moon. Velomar mekudesh hachodesh, to say that the month is sanctified. Ela ibur hachodesh, rather what it says in the Mishnah is the adding of a day to the month, that requires 3. Mashma shetzarech shlosha lomar meuber hachodesh. The Gemara understands that this seems to be saying that you need 3 judges to state, to proclaim that in this month we're adding a day. Amira zu lama, what's the purpose of this statement? Why do they need to proclaim that they're adding a day to the month? Lo likdashe biyom shloshim, you're simply not going to sanctify the new month on the 30th day because you're adding a day to the month. The 30th day is now the last day of that month. Umemela ki mekadshinan lein lamachar, and then memela, automatically, when you sanctify the new month the next day, on day 31, so to speak, which is going to be day 1 of the new month, so then mi'aber hachodesh. So obviously, automatically, we've now added a day to the previous month. Sha'avar, the month that passed, now had an extra day. The yom shloshim basrei shadis lei, because that day number 30 is obviously part of that previous month. Meaning to say, the Gemara is asking, what's the point of having 3 judges to add a day to the month? Doesn't that happen automatically when they proclaim the next month the following day? And so the Gemara continues and answers. Amar Abaya says, Tani Kiddush HaChodesh. What really should be taught in the Mishnah is the sanctification of the new month. That requires 3 judges. And Rashi explains, Tani Kiddush v'al kol chodshei hashana kai. We're going on all the months of the year. Anytime you sanctify the new month, you need 3 judges. That's what the Mishnah actually means. And the Gemara continues, Tanya Nami Hachi, we have a brisa like this as well. Kiddush HaChodesh v'ibur Hashana. When it comes to Kiddush HaChodesh, the sanctification of the new month, and the Ibur Hashana is when they add a month to the year, that's Bishlosha, that's with 3 judges. You see clearly that the language of the brisa is Kiddush HaChodesh. Divrei Rabbi Meir, these are the words of Rabbi Meir. But the Gemara continues, Amar Rava says, Ibor katani, but it's simply not true. In the Mishnah, the language of the Mishnah is Ibor. It does say that we're adding a day to the month, and that requires 3 judges. So therefore, you cannot answer that what we really mean is Kiddush HaChodesh. And so the Gemara continues and answers, Elamar Rava, rather Rava says, what the Mishnah means to say is, Kiddush biyom ibor b'shlosh, if they sanctify the new month on the day of the ibor, meaning to say it's going to be a short month, and they sanctify the new month on day number 30, then they use 3 judges. But achar ibor, but if it's after that day already, let's say it's day 31, we're already saying it is a month with an extra day, so then leka Kiddush, so then there actually is no need to sanctify the new month, and our Mishnah is specifically talking about Kiddush biyom ibor. That's what it means when it says ibor hachodesh b'shlosha. And the Gemara continues, Umani, and who's the author of our Mishnah? Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Tzadok. The author of our Mishnah is Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Tzadok. The Tanya, as we learned in a brayso, Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Tzadok Omer, Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Tzadok says, Im lo nira bismano, if the new moon doesn't appear in its proper time, ein mekachin, also there's no need to sanctify. If you're going to be sanctifying the new moon, or if you're going to be declaring Rosh Chodesh rather on day number 31 because you weren't able to do it on day 30, there is no need to sanctify the new month, shekvar kitshu b'shamayim, because it's already been sanctified in the heavens at that point in time. It already is Rosh Chodesh on that day. And the Gemara continues with an answer in the opposite direction. Rav Nachman Amar, Rav Nachman says, Kiddush achar ibor b'shlosha, actually, when they sanctify the new month after the day of Ibor, meaning when they sanctify the new month on day 31, that's when you do need 3 judges. You need to sanctify that new month. But biyom Ibor, but if they're sanctifying the new month on the day of the Ibor, if they're doing it on day number 30, meaning you're not adding a day to the month, so then leka Kiddush, then actually there's no need to sanctify the new month, exactly the opposite of the above answer. And according to that, Umani, who's the author of our Mishnah, Plimo, he follows Plimo. The Tanya, as we learned in a brayso, Plimo Omer, Plimo says, Bismano, if the Rosh Chodesh is taking place in its proper time, ein mekachino, so then there is no need to be mekadesh the new month, to sanctify the new month. Shelo Bismano, but if it's taking place not in its proper time, meaning you're adding a day to the month, and we're sanctifying the month on day number 31, then mekachino, so then there is a need to sanctify the new month. And the Gemara continues with another answer. Rav Ashi Amar, Rav Ashi says, Liolam Chishav Katani. Really what the Mishnah means to say is the calculation, the determination whether it should be a month with an extra day or not, that is done with 3 judges. Umay Ibor, and what does it mean when the Mishnah uses the word Ibor? It means Chishav the Ibor, when they're making that calculation of whether it should be a month of Ibor. Again, that calculation is made with 3 judges. And the Gemara continues, V'aidi d'kaboy lemisni Ibor Shana. Since the Mishnah is going to teach the case of Ibor Shana, and there you have to use the language of Ibor Shana, as Rashi will explain. So Tananami Ibor Chodesh. So that's why we also use the language of Ibor Chodesh. But again, what we really mean to say is the Chishav, is the calculation, is that determination. And Rashi explains Chishav the Ibor, again, the determination of whether it will be a month that will be an Ibor month. L'chashivim Yavru, they're trying to determine whether or not they should add that day. The Ilu Kiddush, because when it comes to the sanctification, according to this answer, Savar Tana Didan, the Tana of our Mishnah holds the Lo Tzarech L'Kedusha, that there's no need to sanctify at all. Lo Mole V'lo Chaser, you don't need to sanctify if it's a full month or if it's a missing month. Uch Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon L'Kamon, that follows the opinion of Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon, as we'll say later on. V'aidi the Tani Ibor Hashana, and since the Mishnah is going to use the term Ibor Hashana, the Havanami Chish of the Ibor Hashana, that certainly is referring to the calculation of whether we should add a month to the year. V'hasam lo sagi de lo Tani Ibor. Now over there, you can't not have the word Ibor. There you have to have the word Ibor. The Amira boy, because there you do need a proclamation. Sheyikdashu Adar Hasheni l'shem Adar, because the whole point is they have to sanctify this month, this extra month, and they have to call it Adar. They have to say that it's Adar Hasheni. The Shaski, because if they're silent, Memela l'shem Nisan mikvah, and then Memela automatically it's going to be considered Nisan. And so there you have to use the term Ibor in that situation, because they are going to have to declare that this month is going to be the month of Adar. It's going to be Adar Sheni as opposed to Nisan. And so therefore, once we're using that terminology when it comes to Ibor Hashana, so Tananami Gabe Chodesh Ibor HaChodesh, so we also use that same terminology by the month, and we say Ibor HaChodesh, V'karyanami l'chishav Ibor, and we refer to Chishav as Ibor. V'yashminan de Chishav b'inan, and the Chiddush is that you do need a Chishav, you do need to have a determination, a calculation to be made, Avol Kiddush lo b'inan, but you do not need a sanctification, lo l'malei v'lo l'chasr Rebbe Elazar, not for a month that's malei, not for a month that's chasr, it doesn't matter, you do not need that sanctification sanctification of the new month. And the Gemara continues, and this is what Rashi just alluded to, Chishav Chodesh in, Kiddush Chodesh lo. For the Chishav Chodesh, for the determination, that you need 3 judges. For the sanctification, apparently you do not, according to the Mishnah. So who's the author of our Mishnah? Rabbi Eliezer. It's Rabbi Eliezer. The Tanyas we learned in a Brisa, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Eliezer says, the Mesoros Hashas notes, and this we saw in Rashi, that the Girsa might be Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon. In any case, Rabbi Eliezer says, Bein Bizmano, Bein Shalo Bizmano, whether the new month is being sanctified in its proper time, meaning to say day 30, or whether it's happening not in its proper time, meaning to say day 31, Ein Mekachano, so there is no need for an actual sanctification. Shenemar, as it says in the Pasuk, V'kidashtem eshnas hachamishim shana. It says that the 50th year is going to be sanctified, and we learn from that, Shanim atam mekadesh, v'atam mekadesh chodashim. Years have to be sanctified, but months do not have to be sanctified. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots. The Mishnah said, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer b'shlosha v'chul. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said, when it comes to Ibor Hashana, it's done with 3 and then 5 and then 7. And the Gemara says, Tanya, we learned in a Brisa, Keitzad Amar Rav Shimon ben Gamliel b'shlosha maschilin uv'chamisha nosen v'nosnen v'gomen b'shiva. How was it that Rav Shimon ben Gamliel was saying that we start with 3 and then we deliberate with 5 judges and then we conclude the matter with 7 judges? And the Brisa explains, Echad Omer leishev u'shnayim omrim shelo leishev. Let's say one says we need to sit and deliberate whether or not to add a month to the year, but 2 say it's a certainty that we don't need to. There's no need to even sit. So batal yachid b'miyuto. So then that individual is nullified because he is a minority opinion, and we don't even deliberate the matter. Shnayim omrim leishev ve'echad omer shelo leishev. Let's say 2 say we should sit and deliberate. One says no, there's no need to sit. Then mosifan aleim od shnayim, we add another 2 judges, so we have a total of 5. V'nosen bedavar, and then they deliberate the matter whether or not to add a month to the year. And the Brisa continues, Shnayim Omrim Tzricha. Let's say 2 of the judges say that we do need to add a month. Shlosha Omrim Eina Tzricha. 3 say there's no need to add a month. So then Batalu Shnayim B'miyuta, and then the 2 which are the minority, they are nullified, and we say there is no need. Shlosha Omrim Tzricha. But if 3 say there's a need to add a month to the year, Shnayim Omrim Eina Tzricha, and 2 say it's not necessary. So then Mosifan Aleim Od Shnayim. Then we add another 2 judges in order to conclude the matter. She'ein Haminyan Pachos Mishiva, because you can't have less than 7. And the Gemara says, Hani shlosha chamisha v'shiva keneged mi. When we have these numbers of judges, 3, 5, and 7, what does that correspond to? Where did they get these numbers from? And the Gemara says, Pligi bar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmeni v'chad di'imei. It's a machlokus between Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmeni and a person who was with him. Umanu, and who is that person? Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi. It's Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi. V'amri law, some have the version as follows, Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi v'chad di'imei. It's a machlokus between Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi and the one who is with him. Umanu, and who is that? Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmeni. It's Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmeni. In any case, Chad Amar, one of them says, Keneged Birchas Kohanim. It corresponds to Birchas Kohanim. The first pasuk is 3 words, and then 5 words, and then 7. That's where they get the idea of 3, 5, and 7. The Chad Amar, and the other one says it comes from the following sources: Shlosha Keneged Shomrei Hasaf, 3 corresponding to the Shomrei Hasaf. We'll see Rashi in a moment. Chamisha Meiroi Pnei HaMelech. Chamisha is Meiroi Pnei HaMelech, and Shiva Roi Pnei HaMelech, and 7 is from Roi Pnei HaMelech. That's where we get the numbers of 3, 5, and 7. And the Gemara continues, Tani Rav Yosef taught, Tani Shlosha v'chamisha v'shiva. When we talk about these 3, 5, and 7 judges, Shlosha Keneged Shomrei Hasaf, Chamisha Meiroi Pnei HaMelech, and Shiva Roi Pnei HaMelech. Again, Shlosha is corresponding to the Shomrei Hasaf, 5 is Meiroi Pnei HaMelech, and Shiva is Roi Pnei HaMelech. Amar le Abai le Rav Yosef, Abai said to Rav Yosef, Ad ho'idna, my time lo parish lon, mar hachi, until now, why didn't you explain this to us? Amar Lui said to them, Lo hava yadana ditzrichi, so I didn't know that you needed this information. I thought you knew it already. Mi ba'isu mi noi milsa v'lo amri lechu. Did you ever ask me something and I didn't tell it to you? And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots with a mnemonic for the upcoming Gemara. Zman nasi tzarech gedi simin. Tanu Rabban, and the rabbis taught, Ein ma'aver nes hashana ella. We only add to the year. And Rashi explains, again, the first explanation of the 3, 5, 7, Keneged Birchas Kohanim. It corresponds to Birchas Kohanim, Pasuk Rishon Gimel Tevos, Vasheni Hey, Vashlishi Zayin Tevos. First pasuk again is 3 words, the second is 5 words, the third is 7 words. And the other explanation is Shlosha Keneged Shomrei Hasaf, Kolomar Ashkachna de Malchusa Diara. It means to say that we find that when it comes to the government in this world, Shlosha Mamun, and we find sometimes 3 being appointed as officers, V'chamisha Mamun, and sometimes 5, V'shiva Mamun, and sometimes we find 7. Where do we find these things? Gimel Keneged Shomrei Hasaf b'Tzidkiyahu. The 3 by the Shomrei Hasaf, that's by Tzidkiyahu. Gabi Golos Nevuzrad, and by the exile of Nevuzrad. Uzradan, we find 3 over there. We also find 5 over there that are referred to as Meiroi Pnei HaMelech. We find 7. Sorry, Prasu Modai, we find by the officers of Parasu Modai. And when it comes to the Ibor Shana, that's from the tactics of the Kingdom of Heaven in order to arrange the years properly, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph.